Okay, well, let's get started. Hello, Gerardo, Louis, Ricardo, Pablo, and hello to everyone in the audience. I am your host today. My name is Natalie, and I'm part of the marketing team here at CodaPad. Thank you again for taking the time to join us as we talk about creating a tech-friendly candidate experience. My hope is that you'll leave this webinar with a good understanding of what developers hate to see in hiring, what they value and expect, and how you can make sure that your recruitment process is top-notch. Before we dive in, I wanted to quickly share some practical information. So first things first, I'd like to introduce my colleague Molly, or CodaPad, as you see her here. She is working behind the scenes, making sure that everything is running smoothly. If you need help with anything at all, you can reach out to her in the chat. Secondly, I'd like to remind you that this webinar is being recorded and that you will receive the recording in the next few days. Finally, there will be time for a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions for our expert panelists, please submit them in the Q&A tab. You can do so at any time throughout the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer them all. So after this quick introduction, we'll meet our wonderful panelists. We'll then get stuck into a roundtable style discussion before moving on to a live Q&A session. Now, that's more than enough from me. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our pros. I'm joined today by Gerardo Tobar, Pablo Portillo, Ricardo Tovar, and Louis Coulon. Panelists, do you think you could tell us a little bit about yourselves? How about we start with Gerardo and then Pablo and then Ricardo and finally Louis.
Sure thing. Thanks, Natalie. So, pleasure meeting everybody on the chat and everybody attending the webinar. My name is Gerardo. I'm currently a senior team leader for Talos International. I'm currently working in a projects team, which involves everything related to projects, to talent acquisition. But prior to that, I was a recruiter for a division called Digital Solutions. I'm actually wearing the Digital Solutions shirts right now, which is
Corporate.
pretty much the developer, project management, everything related to digital environment for Talos International. So I have plenty of experience working as a recruiter and also working on projects for that division. So I hope some of my experiences can help you today. Pleasure meeting you all.
Thank you.
Okay, hello folks. My name is Pablo Portillo. I have around 12 years of experience working in several roles, from software developer, technical lead, engineering manager, and now I'm working as a solution architect for Telus TV Plus here in Vancouver. And well, in my free time, I like to play Nintendo Switch. I can share some tips as well. Hopefully my experience can also be useful for you.
Thank you. Great to have you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ricardo Tovar. I'm currently in Denver. So professional background, I have 2 years of experience as a software developer. Before that, I was in the military, but I'm currently going through the job search. So I think I got a lot of insight for all of you. And fun fact about me, I really enjoy snowboarding.
Great. Thank you.
So I'll go last. My name is Louis. I'm based in France, actually. I'm the co-founder and general manager of Clever Connect, which is a software provider dedicated to talent acquisition. So our goal is basically to help companies build great experiences to make sure they actually succeed in attracting, engaging talent, to hire them, of course, and reveal their skills. And fun fact about me, actually, I've never been a candidate. So I've never looked for a job. So I can talk about it, but only on the professional side, because I started my company with 23 years old, 10 years ago.
Wow. I was going to say, how did that happen? But now I understand.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I am very happy to have you all on our panel today. Now that we are all acquainted, let's talk candidate experience. So as I mentioned, we want to spark ideas on how to improve your tech hiring experience. But before we get into that, let's dive straight into some of the juicier stuff. So I want to take a look at the recruitment process and identify the things that really push developers' buttons. So what should we not be doing or doing differently? Gerardo, do you think you could start by telling us what's the biggest or the most common misstep that you see in technical hiring or that you've seen in the
Ooh,
past?
yeah. I think right now you can take a look at it in two ways. First, from our side, the people who are recruiting, is right now there's a trend of everything going towards automation, right? Everything's automation. And there's a concept that's being lost, which is communicating with your candidate, right? So I think that right now everybody that applies to that position will probably get an assessment right off the bat. And then there's a very fine line between attracting a candidate and pushing them away, right? So don't send big 3-hour assessments right off the bat. Have some communications with your candidates as an initial step. Get that flow going between recruiter and candidate. I think that's the biggest thing I'm seeing from our side right now that's being lost. And I think that's something that in the past, it really helped build the connection between not just you, the recruiter, but the company itself and the brand with anybody who's applying to a position.
So to really be careful about what the first impression is, I suppose, and yes to coding assessments, but not any coding assessment. And yeah, if you're going to be asking them to work for hours and hours on a long project as a first step, possibly you're going to put some candidates off. Ricardo, what would be an immediate red flag for you as a candidate?
Yeah, I can piggyback on what Gerardo said. Not allowing time to get to know the people that you're interviewing with, or the interviewee. So yeah, that is I guess one of the first red flags. The other one is not really communicating the whole process of like timelines, salary, kind of like that's another thing. Not really like communicating that from the get-go. And yeah, those are the two of the main ones, just right off the bat.
Thank you.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
I
I think,
may.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to add one more, based on my experience. There is something that recruiters sometimes, sometimes probably because of lack of understanding of the complete industry of things like that. But there are these all-in-one roles, where you combine skills that are for DBA or developer, network, DevOps, and all in one single profile. And that for me is a red flag, because it means that there is no clear expectation for the candidate.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. I mean, obviously, I am not a software engineer, but I'd say that in any field, I think obviously I work in marketing and content, and I've seen job posts before where it's just like a laundry list of so many things, and you think one person can't do all of that and do it well. So that for me, exactly, it's the same feeling. It's like, okay, so you're obviously not clear on what it is you're looking for or the role you're trying to fill. Louis, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just a few things. Actually, I agree with everything that has been said, and as I said, I'm not a candidate, but we have hired. We are 300 people, so I've done quite some interviews, and I also have heard from some surveys we do, or asking our clients, that the thing that's quite unappreciated is the trend of fake job ads. Like basically, you're gonna need developers every time in your company, and so you push like fake job ads that are very generic, so you make sure you get as many candidates as you could. And actually, it's the exact opposite that you do. Like you're trying just I'm just a bait in some way. So that's something that's not really appreciated. And if I can kind of try to sum it up, I would say on a general level that of course IT profiles are quite there's quite some shortage, right, in those profiles, but there are also many other profiles that where there's some shortage. And I think the misunderstanding is also the fact that recruiters might not really understand that the big majority of candidates they're going after are passive candidates. So that means they're in a job, right? They're not actively looking for a job, and they kind of try to fit them in their active recruitment process for people who actually would apply and come to an interview tomorrow. So I think that's one of the biggest mistakes. Like you feel urged to be there tomorrow or talk in 5 minutes on the phone, whereas you need this kind of long-term approach. First, let's meet, and then let's see what happens, right?
Mm-hmm. And Ricardo, I'm going to come back to you without naming any names. Do you have any horror stories, any stories of a recruitment process gone bad, something that you have, you've had a really bad experience with?
Yeah, I actually do. So when I was looking for my first role, I went through, again, no names, through an interview process where it was very long. It took about 8 interviews. And this is a very common trend right now that I see is people just ghosting you after going through the whole process. So yeah, it consisted of 2 initial interviews where it was like just introducing myself, getting to know what the company was about. And then we transitioned into 4, I think it was, 4 different coding, live coding interviews.
Right.
Where I had to actually like write down code in front of people, you know. And then it ended with another 2 interviews where I was meeting the team. Then I was told to wait for about a week to get a response and see if I was a fit for the company. A week went by, I sent the follow-up, I got no response. A month went by, nothing again. And yeah, it's just I was waiting. And actually what's funny is that was like about a year ago. And recently, I think like before the year mark, I got a response saying that I was not fit to be in the company. So yeah, I just say don't ghost people. If you got any feedback or anything, that would be greatly appreciated to us that we are interviewing. That way we know what we're doing good and what we're not doing good. So yeah, that's a kind of experience that I had.
Yeah, that makes me cringe. But I think realistically, I mean, we're all in the real world, and I know that to give like a personalized answer to everybody who sends an application is not always feasible if you've got a high volume of candidates. But once you have candidates that are going through your process, that have met multiple people in the company, that have put time and effort into your hiring process, yeah, they need a personalized response. Like it's not okay to just ghost them. And I don't know what you guys think, but I would possibly say if there's been like a glitch in the system, it happens. I don't know, somebody left the team, there was something happened, and that candidates have been waiting for, like you say, like a year. I don't know what you all think, but would you send a message at that point, or would you just think, okay, these candidates have all moved on to something else. We're not going to message them because it's going to look even worse, and then start afresh? What would you do?
So personally, I would always go for transparency. I mean, every mistake is human, right? So everyone would, I guess Ricardo would have preferred to know that actually has been a mistake and someone left, and that's why it took 1 year, rather than maybe thinking his profile is so bad that actually no one even bothered answering, right? So I think I would always go for that. And maybe going back on what you said before, one of the best practices I've seen from many recruiters is going for the in between, like basically saying, sorry, you're not hired. We cannot go forward with you. If you want us to go through the actual reasons together rather than personalizing by mail, feel free to reach out and I will give you the information. So you actually make sure you spend that time for the actual, I don't know, 20% of candidates that will want that. And so the other ones still have a good impression because you offer. So it's the best practice, I would say.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good call. What about on the recruiter or company side? Has anybody had experience with, a glitch in the system, something that's gone wrong, something that you've learned from a recruitment process that, went bad?
Yeah, I'm doing that because I'm doing technical interviews for my company, and this is something that is happening more often now. Do you know developers are using other tools during interviews like ChatGPT to answer technical questions, or even during live coding tests? I have seen them doing this more often nowadays, like copying code and things. I also see this other thing about people behind the camera answering questions or doing the interview by the candidate. So yeah,
Somebody who is not the candidate.
yeah, like behind the
Right.
camera answering questions. Yes. Yeah, weird, interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, it does
Yeah, for
happen.
sure.
I think, or in any case, if CoderPad stance on tools such as ChatGPT, AI assisted tools. We've talked about this in recent webinars as well. Our take is that it's not cheating, that it's not necessarily cheating, that it's using a tool that is available to developers and that they would use in their everyday work anyway. However, getting somebody else to do the test in your place, I think everybody can agree that that's kind of cheating, really.
Yeah,
I
for
don't
sure.
think there's any two ways about it.
Definitely.
Did anyone else have anything they wanted to share, experiences that they've learned from, painfully or not?
Well, I think that the basic mistake, if I can add one, is seeing this like really technical recruitment only. I mean, I'm only looking for hard skills basically, and if the hard skills are checked, then let's go forward in some way. And forgetting that there's a lot of soft skills, even if those profiles I've seen are very as quite technical, of course. And forgetting also that they need to match with the manager and with the team. So I would never go for only technical tests and forget to meet teammates, meet the manager in a quite informal way can also be very useful.
I think both for the candidate experience and for your hiring success, I think to sort of have that human soft skills interaction is essential to the hiring process. I'd agree with you. So we've talked about what can go wrong. What about what you can do right? I'd like to talk about what developers really value in a hiring process. So what do we think that developers value most? I mean, Ricardo, I'm going to turn to you as a candidate. What are you looking for? What do you value in a hiring process?
Okay, let's just start off on based on what I said previously. If you have a candidate going through the whole or that went through the whole process, maybe like we mentioned, a little personalized feedback on what they did good, right, why they did wrong, and how they can improve. Maybe an overview of what the whole interview process from the get-go, just so you are aware of like how many rounds are going to be in the interview. And a timeline for when a company will like to hire you by or a prospect. The other one is kind of giving a little information of what kind of like coding challenges they're going to be doing, just so like we can prepare mentally, because it's hard to just come in and like put yourself on the spot and code something up with no context of what you're doing. So kind of just a little information on it. It doesn't even have to be like the actual challenge, just a little information about it. And lastly, allowing you to meet someone before you actually go and do like a live interview or live coding interview. Just to give you time to prepare mentally, feel comfortable with the other person that's on the other side of the camera. But yeah, those are a few tips.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd go back to what you were saying about sort of communicating the hiring process up front. There are some companies, I don't have the names off the top of my head, but there are some companies that do this publicly and really well. They've got like a page that says this is what the hiring process looks like. This is what you can expect. Step 1, 2, 3, however many. And either specifically for tech recruitment, obviously that's most useful here. And I think that also shows you that they actually have a standardized hiring process, that they are doing it thoughtfully and trying to mitigate any bias that might be introduced by something that's not standardized and that changes like for every candidate. So definitely communicating either publicly or just having something that you can send over to candidates, just to say like, this is what you can expect from the process. These are the people you're going to meet, and this is like what each step kind of looks like. I think is definitely reassuring for the candidate. Pablo, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I believe we all agree, right? Communication is key for success because remember, people is also investing their lives, their time, right? So if you keep a communication, two-way communication is important. Clear roles and expectations, as I mentioned, right? What you're looking for, transparency about the process, but not only that, right? Salary, benefits. There are companies that are afraid about sharing if this work is to actually go to the office or you can do that in an hybrid way. So that's also very important for developers nowadays, you know, if they're able to work from everywhere, people like to travel. So yeah, those are the things that I believe we value most as developers.
There's really no point trying to trick candidates into applying because you say you're remote friendly and actually it's like one afternoon of remote per week. That's not remote. There's no point. I mean, people are just gonna waste their time. So you might as well be upfront on that kind of important um like benefits and logistical information. I agree. That's a very good point. Um, and so on those that have been involved in interviews, in hiring process, on the sort of employer side of things, what kind of feedback have you received from candidates? What kind of positive feedback have you received? Candidates saying, okay, this was great, like I loved this, or oh, it's nice to see a company doing this.
I think the most important thing is keeping the human side of things, right? As Pablo said, don't forget there's another person behind the screen, right? There's somebody that's probably looking for a new opportunity. There's somebody that's probably looking for their first job. They're doing their first interview set or something similar. So keep that human side of things always in sight, right? And I think that's going to help you get better feedback. My boss always said we're in the business of helping people get jobs. So don't forget that. I think that's when you get the best feedback as a recruiter or somebody on the back end side of things in an interview process. Keeping communication going, keeping communication open, answering those questions, even if they might be those hard questions. Is this a remote job? No, you have to go
Mhm.
to the site. It's fine. There's a
Yeah.
job for everybody. There's a position for everybody. You just have to find the correct person to the correct slot, right? So keeping things human, keeping communication open, I think that's when you get the best feedback. And I can give you an example here. You can see Pablo here. Um, I did not interview Pablo. I did not recruit him, but I did work with him. I think it was maybe Pablo. Maybe you remember more accurately. Like 3, 4 years ago, we were seeing a project that involved recruitment, and Pablo was helping us. And for this webinar, they asked us if we had somebody in mind who had who could help us, who could show us the developer side of things for a recruitment process. And we thought of Pablo. So I think that speaks a lot to how good the relationship can be if you keep that human side of things in between a recruiter and a developer, right?
Hmm. Yes, definitely. There's just one thing that I'd add that you were saying about obviously transparency in communication and what we were saying about being upfront about sort of everything, the role and the process and all of that. And we mentioned ChatGPT and AI assisted tools. I'd say that also if you have like a live coding interview, um, you can also communicate on whether it's okay for candidates to use that kind of tool, whether it's something that's expected, what kind of question or prompt you like to reassure them on their use of those tools to say it's like for us that's okay. You're using a resource, you're using something that's available to you. CodaPad, for example, we actually have a ChatGPT integration. Um, so to be able to reassure them about that as well, something that's new like that and that they might be unsure about, then that's a good idea as well. Any information that you can give to put people at ease, um, that's really the whole point. There's no need for it to be stressful and nerve-wracking. I mean, it's gonna be a little bit nerve-wracking. It's recruitment, but anything you can do to put people at ease, I think that's definitely a good idea.
I agree.
Um,
Keep it transparent. I think that's the
right.
best way to handle it. It's definitely not okay to have somebody behind you giving you the answers, as Pablo shared in his horror story. That's definitely not okay. But there are things like ChatGPT. It's not the end of the world, right? It's 7 years ago we were speaking about this when everybody started using Stack Overflow. Then everybody started using Reddit subreddits to find code and everything. It's been happening since a long time ago, right? So it's not the end of the world that ChatGPT exists. Just keep it transparent. It's okay to use it. It's not okay to use it at this part of the process. It's not okay to have somebody behind you giving you the answers, but everything's going to be okay.
Right. Louis, did you want to add something, or shall we move on to maybe our advice on how to improve candidate experience?
Yeah, well, very quickly talking about AI and ChatGPT. I mean, we did a recent study on a European panel. So, I mean, this might not be totally true for other continents, of course. But what we see actually is that it's still very unknown, actually. I mean, when you ask people, would you expect to have AI in your next recruitment processes, and explaining what ChatGPT can do for writing resumes, writing cover letters, helping whatever. And actually, the majority of people don't know. They say, I don't know. So I would, my advice would be, if you put it in your recruitment process, one, be transparent, communicate about it, because it's not okay to have some AI somewhere in your process without explaining it. Two, you can have a first mover advantage in Europe, at least, because most companies still don't. And three, explain it very well, because most people don't really get what it's about. Maybe this is a bit more generalist than IT recruitment for sure. I think this population is way more aware, but still a general advice.
Yeah, thank you. So speaking of advice, I wanted to move on to how you can improve candidate experience, specifically for developers, specifically for technical roles. So what maybe Geraldo or Louis, what do you think is the one thing that you can do that could have the biggest impact? If you had to start somewhere, where would you start?
Want to go first, Gerardo?
Sure thing. So the first thing, and I know we keep piling up on this, but there are small things you can do in your process that can keep like lengthy connections with the persons you are assessing. The first thing is I would recommend, if you don't have an active pipeline or like a project that revolves around having giving more candidates more opportunities in the same company, that's something you need to implement, right? Because it's not just I interviewed for this position, I saw this thing with this recruiter, and I didn't get it. That's too bad. Thank you, TELUS International, for giving me this opportunity. I'll see you in 2 years if I see another position. No, you need to keep it going, right? Okay, oh, too bad. Don't worry, I have another position that's for the same role. It's pretty much the same. You're gonna save up because you're not gonna have to do the assessment because you already did it. I'm gonna walk you through this, right? I'm gonna walk you through this. I'm gonna help you get into this new experience while still being on the same pipeline, right? So I think if you don't have an active pipeline in your organization, that's the first thing you need to do. Keep it human. Don't have just a pipeline with a list of names in there. Keep it actually active, right? The second thing I would recommend, but the first thing I would recommend before recommending that is don't do 4 of them, is live coding interviews. Live coding interviews are, as I say, very human. If you now have a tool that includes ChatGPT in it, if you keep those things that are part of the environment now included in live coding interview, I think that keeps the human side of things in an interview, and it also gives you live
Realistic.
coding. Yeah, realistic expectations. But as a recommendation, do not do 4 interviews, please. I remember if I was with Ricardo, I had to go through 4 live coding interviews. I think that's a bit too much.
Thank you. Louis?
Yes. So if I had to go for impact, what's the most impactful and let's say short-term impact, I would go for building a real employee advocacy, a real employee referral program, because I think, as we said, 80–90% of candidates in this field are passive. They're not actively looking for a job and they don't like to do it. So you need to get to them in some way through their network. And a few examples I have. Some studies show that if you receive a content, might it be a job ad or a blog article, an employer branding, whatever content, you're 50 times more willing to read it if you get it from someone you actually know by WhatsApp, email, whatever, than the exact same content received by a brand. So you get 50 times more chance of success of getting your job ad read, of getting your employer branding content read. And going further, I mean, some customers of our employer branding software, not employer branding, sorry, employee referral software, show that the people they've hired, 90% of them were not actively looking for a job. So it really shows this can help you source those non-active candidates that are not actively looking on job board.
Yeah, and I guess that gives you a way, like Gerardo was saying, gives you a way to keep your talent pool, sort of keep adding people to your talent pipeline, to your talent pool, and sort of to get those engaging contacts and keep those relationships alive.
Yeah, and I would actually even build a specific program in there, Women in Tech. Maybe this is specific also to Europe. I guess the US might be a bit more ahead on that, but the representation of women in those jobs, in those in this field is still quite low, and so you get a real chance to touch people if you can put your women working in this field really in the spotlight.
Thank you. So we're about halfway through. I'm going to see what questions we have from the audience. We've received a few questions in the Q&A tab. So I'm just going to go through the questions and see who could maybe give us an answer and share their experience. I've got one here that I guess, Ricardo, maybe you could give your opinion. But somebody who's asking, in your experience, is it better to have the technical hiring manager as a first point of contact with candidates or the HR/recruiter person?
From personal experience, I'm have to go with the technical hiring manager, just because they have a little more context on like the technologies that are used and all those questions that you want to ask as developers. And also, let's just keep it that way, because I think HR, kind of like recruiters sometimes are not like so well versed on like I said, the tech stack that us as developers are going to use in the everyday job. So yeah, technical hiring manager, I think is a person to go to.
And I suppose I guess if that's not feasible as a first point of contact, at some point you want candidates to be able to have a conversation with the hiring manager, with somebody who's technical, so that you can ask that kind of question about the technical stack or the projects that they're working on, or that kind of thing.
Can I add a little more to that?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, all right, yeah. So again, if they're not so well versed into like those kind of, or they don't have the answer to like more technical questions like that, then yeah, like just given the time to like follow up and ask those questions to their team, and then just give us that feedback or give us the answer to that. So I mean, it doesn't necessarily matter who we're talking to, as long as like they can answer that we have. So yeah.
What kind of thing is it that you want to know? What kind of questions do you see that you ask often?
All right, like I said, first one is usually tech stack. Second one is kind of, I want to see like an overview of what we are gonna do from day to day. So that is like probably the most asked question. I don't know, from a recruiter standpoint, but that's the one I asked in every single interview. It's like, what am I gonna be doing day to day? So yeah, the technical hiring manager is always gonna have, or usually has, a better answer to that, because they know a little bit more about the team. Let me see. All right, let's keep it at that right now. I'm kind of blanking out, but I'll get I can put it in the chat if I have anything else.
Okay, thank you. So I'm having a look here. We have a question about feedback from candidates. So what do you think is the best way to collect feedback on the hiring experience from candidates? I think this is a great question. I think it's already a great idea to be thinking, okay, so yeah, I should actually be getting feedback from candidates to see what is right and what is wrong in my hiring process, and what I could change. Does anyone have any advice or experience on the best way to collect that feedback?
I have some experience on the candidate NPS kind of features. I would say I could share just mistake that should not be made. I mean, the trick would be to measure those things only either verbally in some way or even by email to only to people, let's say, that have been hired or at the end of the process, let's say, because I mean, quite weird, right? Also asking it at the very beginning, just like when people just applied in some way before while they're still expecting to get an interview, you also kind of collect quite weird feedback, because I mean, people might think that you will read it, and if the feedback is negative, they won't get the interview, you know, so it could be biased. And so it's multiple touch point feedback actually that gives you the best real assessment of your process. It helps you understand where your experience might be flawed. And secondly, it gives you an accurate rating of the full process, right? So I've seen quite great stories where customers have really great candidate NPS at the moment when they just gave a negative answer, actually. And this is I would say the thing you should reach for. You tell people, sorry, you're not going to get hired, but still, could you rate your experience with us? If you can get a good rating at that moment, you know you're doing things quite well.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Thank you for that. So I have one question that's specifically for Gerardo. As a tech recruiter, what can we look forward to upskill ourselves in, especially in tech, to become more confident while speaking to candidates? So obviously this speaks to what you were saying, Ricardo, about recruiters being able to answer questions about the job. What would you say? What do you think that tech recruiters should learn more about or become more comfortable talking about?
So I would say know your technical lingo. You're not going to be the technical interviewer. You're not going to be a technical expert who's going to be doing the live coding assessments with the candidate. So it's okay if you're not a systems engineer or something similar. But I think knowing the basics and knowing like the big picture stuff, it's going to help you. I remember Ricardo saying that sometimes it's better to speak to a technical manager first, because the recruiter may not know the technical jargon. Then that's definitely something you as a recruiter can upskill on. I've seen these efforts done by our team. I've seen them taking. There's so much online education out there now, and there are so many initiatives that are out there that teach like basic concepts and technologies now. And I see them taking 15-minute courses. I see them taking diplomas and something similar. And again, if we were to be recruited by Pablo right now to join his team, we would fail miserably. We're not developers, we're not like coders, but we do have the concepts written down, right? We do know the concepts. If I see a job description for a front end, if I see a job description for a back end, if I'm speaking about APIs, if I'm speaking about React.js, if I'm speaking about specific technologies, I know what they are, I know what they mean. Again, I'm not going to be able to code in them, but as a recruiter, my responsibility is at least knowing what I'm offering and knowing what type of technologies I'm going to be looking out for this candidate.
Right. Thank you. And I think if I can add to that, just based on conversations that we've had actually in previous webinars, we were talking about collaboration between hiring managers and technical recruiters. And one of the subjects that came up was, how do technical recruiters sort of get more comfortable talking about tech? And one of the things is, go and talk to your hiring managers, go and talk to your tech leads, to your tech team. Ask them questions if you're unsure about something in the job profile or in the candidate profile, what you're looking for. Ask questions, do your research, ask ChatGPT if you're not sure what a language is used for or what a different technology. But yeah, definitely talk to your team, leverage the people that you have internally that can probably help you a great lot understanding their day-to-day job. I'm looking over the questions. So if I've noticed a lot more candidates freshly out of college are not as qualified post-COVID, and the claims on their resumes do not match their in-person interview performance, which is always disappointing. what can we do to find better quality candidates, as well as reducing the amount of time interviewing candidates that are not qualified? I don't know if anyone wants to raise their hand for this. So just to say that again, I think it's to avoid, so obviously it's part of the screening process, to avoid having candidates that go through the screening process that don't have the technical skills that you're looking for, and that you end up interviewing and kind of wasting everybody's time, so to say. What would be your advice here?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, you know, because everybody can put whatever they want in the resume. So I would say having technical people doing or as part of the first screening, right? It will be interesting, because that's how I actually do that, you know. With some technical questions, I'm able to identify if someone is a good fit for the position or not, instead of investing a lot of time sending a lot of online tests and questionnaires.
And I think, if I may, talk about CoderPad here. Obviously, if you have a test, a coding test as part of your screening process, that will allow you to sort of test the basic technical skills that you need for that job, to follow up with that. To follow up with then a live coding interview will tell you a lot more that you need to know about the candidate, but so that you have that sort of better fit from the screening step of your process, then a coding assessment would help you do that. Did anyone else want to add something here, or shall we go for another question? So, if your company was already following most of the best practices, what would you implement into the hiring process to really make it stand out from other companies in terms of providing candidates with good candidate experience? I feel like this is $1 million question.
Yeah, the secret sauce.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone, if Louis, maybe you have an answer, or Ricardo, maybe there's something that you've seen that has made a company stand out, something that's different.
So maybe we can even ask our guests if someone wants to share their experience in the chat, because I mean, maybe some have some great experiences here, but I've seen something that's quite let's say that stands out and works quite well. Again, for most profiles, especially when they're quite hard to hire, most people, of course, need to understand which environment they're going to get into and want to meet actual colleagues to understand the real culture of the company, the real management style, the real job, the real level of tech, for instance, knowledge and stuff. And of course, most companies build their process saying, let's put ambassadors at each step. And so it looks like a bit fake sometimes, because that person is super great, explaining everything great, right? And so what we have done sometimes is like showing the pictures of the team and say, pick one or two people you would like to talk to, right? And so the person like picks them out and say, okay, let's schedule the appointment so you can talk to them tomorrow or whatever. I've also made live, let's say, like people come to interview. Well, actually, basically, we try also to build a 3-hour session where people can meet several people, spend some time a bit walking around the office without being super straight, and again saying, hey, now you get a half an hour if you want to take two people in the office and talk to them to understand what this is like. It feels like more real and not so set up like Hollywood style, right?
Not so rehearsed, I suppose.
It's both original, and I think it works. I mean, of course, for that you need to have to be quite confident with your culture and what people are going to say without training them.
Thank you. Ricardo.
All right, sorry about that noise. All right, so I think like I mentioned before this, given a little context of what you're gonna be doing during the interview. I've also done in-person interviews where I go and code in front of people, and those kind of like if it's gonna be a long one, giving breaks to people and allowing them to like gather their thoughts. Another thing is during the actual interview, sometimes you might take a little longer to respond, and I've had bad experiences where like they want you to just spit something out on the spot. Just allowing that person to like actually gather the thoughts, kind of like take a pause and then no, so that they can formulate a good answer for you because you don't want to have your person interviewing feeling pressured to just spitting something out. So yeah, those are a few things that have made companies stand out for me when I was interviewing.
Thank you. Pablo, did you want to add something? Sorry, you unmuted. I didn't know if that was to add to
Oh,
this
no, no.
question.
No,
Okay.
don't worry about
We
this.
do have a couple of questions left. Okay, so this is from a developer, so somebody who's in a candidate's shoes. I'm a full stack developer. I had a break of 8 months. Now I'm not getting a call back from many of the recruiters at the companies I'm applying to. What may be the reason in general, or what can I do? I guess I'd specify to say, what can he do to explain that gap in his resume? Gerardo, maybe what kind of, or Ricardo, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if I'm understanding this question correctly, I think what you want to do is probably stay active on whether it's emails to these recruiters or these people that you're talking to. LinkedIn is another great resource that you might want to stay active on. That way, people know what you're doing. Because if you're taking that long of a break or that long time, they might think that you're not like actually coding or keeping up with your skills. So just kind of like give an insight of what it is that you're doing, I guess, kind of on a day-to-day basis. So they know what you're doing and what you're up to.
Yeah, I guess if you can be transparent on the reason that there is that gap in your resume, if it's too personal of a reason, then like Ricardo said, I would focus on maybe not saying exactly what happened, but saying this is how I've kept up to date on my skills during this period. What other questions can we answer? Okay, are there things to put in job postings and to tell people at job fairs that would draw them to your company over others, especially when big name companies offer so many well-known perks that most companies don't offer? So yeah, if you can't offer everything that Google offers, what can you put forward? What can you highlight that will attract people to you, that will attract candidates? I guess again, this is similar to what we were saying about what can make you stand out. But I guess this is specifically in sort of job
Job ad.
postings,
Yeah.
job ads. What would you recommend highlighting?
Well, I guess it depends. If you're a smaller company, I mean, at the beginning of a venture, you can definitely like, I think, focus on the entrepreneurial spirit and the kind of the venture basically, and maybe also the shares or whatever stock options that you could have, and kind of say we are not Google, but we might be someday. If you're a bigger company, then I guess this is. I mean, it's something you cannot do. I would go into. I mean, our studies show that most people today are looking also for some sense, right? In not sense, how would you say it? Some meaning to what they do, right? Some purpose, exactly. Some purpose to what they do. So that's something you can definitely focus on, because I think a lot of more traditional companies actually offer more purpose to what they do, maybe than those 5 you mentioned in your question.
And I think a few things that we touched on in this webinar, salary, sort of, is it a remote role? Is it hybrid? What kind of like working environment? And we also mentioned sort of being transparent about your hiring process. So if maybe you're a smaller company, but you've put a lot of effort into standardizing and like building a collaborative hiring process that you can communicate. and that people, candidates will think, oh yeah, that looks like a reasonable process, and I'd like to apply. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we mentioned that might be good to highlight. Your technical stack, I feel like that's given. And yeah, I guess sort of ask yourself and ask your tech team, for example, why they enjoy working at your company. And I think that'll give you some good food for thought on what your unique advantages are and what you can put forward in your job descriptions. So I think maybe one or two last questions. What is your opinion on algorithm-based interviewing algorithm-based interviewing technical interviews? Are they a strong indicator for success in an engineering position, or is a practical interview style, a more preferable approach? So I guess it's algorithm-based interviewing versus practical live coding interviews. Any thoughts?
Yeah, you can still do both, So from my point of view, and also based on my experience, it depends, There are some positions where we need in our company developers that will support application with millions of users, right? Where the performance is very important for us. So for those kind of roles that at the end will be senior roles, we do have algorithm-based interviews because we know that we will expect that from the developers. But that's not the case for all the positions. And sometimes the companies are making this mistake about asking for complex algorithm to all the different positions, even if they are junior. And though that doesn't mean that at the end they will actually use that on a daily basis, right? So again, it depends.
So I guess trying to keep it as realistic as possible, as close to the day-to-day, like the actual technical role that you're hiring for.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I added to this.
Yes.
From a developer standpoint, I always prefer to do a technical challenge where it's closely related to what I'm going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. So like Pablo mentioned, it's if they're going to be using algorithms and performance is something that is super important, then yes, I agree with going that route. But in most cases, especially when maybe since I was applying in my junior role for my first role, I preferred doing like coding challenges that reflected what I was going to be doing. So yeah, I always prefer those. And that's kind of how you should base it, just depending on the position that you're hiring for and what it is that the person's going to be doing.
Yes, definitely. Make it relevant and realistic and useful both to you and the candidate. I think maybe one last question. So this is somebody that's bouncing off what we were saying about introducing candidates to some of the tech team. So the question is, how many introductions is too many? I don't want to overwhelm candidates. Do you have any thoughts on that? Maybe Ricardo, from a candidate point of view, is there such a thing as too many introductions?
And when we say introductions, it's just like getting to know the person you're that's interviewing you.
Okay. Yeah, and getting to know the technical team at the company.
Okay, yeah, I think one or two should be fine. Other than that, then it's probably just I don't want to say waste of time, but it could be on both sides of the party. So I think one or two is the the perfect number.
Okay, thank you. Oh, this is a really interesting question. Okay, this is definitely the last one. But someone from the audience says, I've had a few software engineers get to the offer stage of the process to then decline or ghost us. Any advice on how to get that part right? So I feel like this isn't something that we've talked about, but yes, how frustrating to have a software engineer go through your whole process, make an offer, and for them to then decline or disappear. It's going to happen. It happens to the best of us. But any advice on that part specifically?
I would start by assessing people who have rejected trying to ask why they rejected to understand where the problem comes from, basically. Might it be the salary, the time you have spent to do that offer because maybe a competitor was quicker. So yeah, I would definitely start by that and try to correct whatever is going wrong.
Yeah, I think like the candidate experience, it really is across the whole process, right to your offer and even past that to onboarding and the first 30, 60, 90 days in the company. So definitely you do need to pay attention to every stage. And yeah, I think that's a really good point to get feedback from candidates. I think maybe I'd again highlight what Gerardo was saying about keeping it human. If you've been able to build that relationship, then when you can make an offer, can you like talk to the person directly? Can you show them how enthusiastic you are and how good you feel about the offer that you're making and how much, how good you feel about them potentially joining the company? A little bit of enthusiasm, I think, goes a long way.
And it's
Louis.
like closing a sales process, right? So maybe also you can go and look a bit at best practices from the sales processes because you have some tips there to get that document, that contract signed on the sales part. So there's a lot of tricks for salespeople to force their contacts into signing the contract. Maybe there's some things you can read also on that.
I don't think we want to force anybody to accept the offer. But yes, definitely, maybe the sales team at your company, they have some advice.
Yeah.
I do agree that there's a little bit of a sales analogy. Obviously, a candidate wants to convince you that they're right for the role, but you as a company, you need to sell your company and the role and your team. And yeah, the offer is kind of a crucial part of that process. Okay, we are just about at time. Thank you so much to all of you for being here today. This was a really interesting, insightful discussion. That is all we have time for, but I will send you all the recording. Thank you again to our panel. Thank you to everybody who attended, and happy hiring, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.